Okay, this is probably the most ethically concerning video in this little series which I've been doing. I've got to make sure that I'm not doing harm by what I say. It's important that I explain what I understand to be the truth. It's also important for me to explain to you the approach to the truth. I mean, sometimes you can come across a book or a story or a movie and maybe there's something in it you don't quite get. You don't quite get it because you haven't got like the way of perceiving these things intellectually and in terms of understanding. So that is a problem for humans. And on top of that, humans themselves are naturally fearful or superstitious or arrogant and against various ideas, and because they're arrogant and against some ideas they're not really looking into them properly, or because they're fearful they think they've understood it when in fact they haven't understood anything because all they've got is fear. In my experience over all these years of being a tarot reader, I do come across people who are terrified of entities. I had one client at one time who was a student of some description, and she was terrified that Buddha or Jesus hated her because of some negative thoughts that she had, and she would be getting on the phone like, oh, is it going to be okay? And I'd be saying like, get on with your life, you know. Most people don't need to be concerned about these things. Most people don't need to think about the subject at all in any way whatsoever, and because of that, I think that people who are like that are very, very comfortable and very good. And then there's the other people who do believe in this, that and the other, and they take it to kind of extremes, and they're assuming that all of the laws of nature is purely down to the spirit world, and therefore they will focus their attention in that direction, and that won't do them any good, and it certainly won't help them to think. And then you got the other people who take the psychic worlds a bit too seriously and a bit too literally, and they then rely upon that too much. And that's also not healthy, it's not good, it's not beneficial, and there's lots of stuff going on there. And there's people involved in religion who are terrified of spirits from other religions, and there's people who are thinking that they are in touch with spiritual forces, who think they can use that to attack somebody else when they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what's going on really. It's just that they're impassioned in some particular way with a form of monomania, some variety of obsession with one particular concept, that they end up becoming just like nasty pieces of work. They don't start thinking and thinking about what they're saying and how things are done. And I've also had clients who ended up, because they developed such literalistic ideas about the psychic world, that they were very easy to be manipulated by unpleasant psychics. And I spend quite a lot of my time as an online psychic stopping people from being addicted to online psychics. Why would I do that? Considering that my revenue is based upon talking to people, because I'm trying to actually be there for people, I'm trying to help people, and I'm not trying to turn someone into a money slave for me. And that's wrong. There's right and there's wrong, and all explanations that one has to give has to be based upon the understanding and idea that you don't know who's going to be watching your video, you don't know what state of mind they're going to be in, you don't know if they've got a lousy fever at the time and they're going to be impressionable, you don't know whether they've got something wrong with them, or they haven't got something wrong with them, but they've got something wrong with their perceptions, which could lead them down a bit of a rabbit hole of exploration into something which won't necessarily help them and could basically drive them insane. Just through intellectual processes and fears and anxieties and worries and oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So what kind of way can I describe this? All I can do is look at a few personal experiences. But remember, personal experiences themselves are not the be-all and end-all of everything, because there could be something wrong with them. Now, I've got this personal ritual in my life in which once a year, about Christmas time, I watch a version of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And I don't know whether you've seen it recently, but there is a scene in it which is actually really, really, really important. And that's the scene when Scrooge is being skeptical when he comes across the ghost of Marley. Because he says that, this experience could be being caused by anything, including digestive upset. And that's why he turns around to Marley.
There's more of gravy about you than grave!
And that's actually quite an important thing for him to have thought, okay? Because it doesn't really matter how intense the experience you have is, there's always room to question further and further and further. And just because you've come across some people who say that they're believers doesn't mean to say that they are right, or indeed that you should believe like them and talk like them, and then you'll be somehow accepted, because some people do that. They shift their beliefs and the way in which they express themselves just to try and be accepted. But who the heck are you being accepted by? And is that person who is expressing the fact that they're a believer actually being genuine in terms of their belief? And what was it that caused them to have that belief? And was the thinking that they went into that cause, which had led them to have that belief, actually good enough for them to be able to make a statement inside themselves as to what is true, prior to them evangelizing to you, or brainwashing you, or culting you up? There's too many considerations here. But thinking about that, you guys know who I am, you guys know what I do. You've seen like my whole YouTube history. Some of you have, and some of you haven't, but basically there's quite a few videos back there. Just use the search facility and watch some of the old stuff, because I might have been a bit more of an immature prick 16 years ago, but on the other hand, I was fun, okay? I was fun. So have a look at that stuff, it's good. So therefore, after all of my years of experimenting with this and exploring this, can I say that entities objectively exist? No. I don't think I can say that. I have had really, really intense experiences, and they're all in this like spectrum, some of which were like more mild, and some were more intense. Some were more curious, some happened to other people, and some happened to people I've experimented on rather unethically myself, which I'm not proud of at all. I mean, it's just like if you were to want to find out about France, and the only experience you've got is the Louvre Gallery, all right? And you just teleported into the Louvre Gallery, and that's it. You know, you're in France now. Okay, this is France. Oh gosh, it's got pictures in it. And then all of a sudden you pop back to your bedroom in wherever. What happened there? Oh, I was in France. What happens? It had things hanging up on the wall, and that's what France is all about. And then going out and writing some kind of like massive theology about what Paris is really about, and everyone's buying, oh God, we know what Paris is, strange land across the water where things hang on the walls. You know, with a tiny bit of information, all you've got is a tiny bit of information. With a tiny bit of experience, all you've got is a tiny bit of experience. With other things said by other people, all you've got is things said by other people. It doesn't matter whether it is an authoritative text of a particular faith, or whether the particular person who wrote it is somehow highly regarded in some particular discipline or whatever. It's still the words that other people have said. Alright, the early science, I mean practical physical science that goes back many centuries, a lot of which has been either elaborated upon and built upon, or it's been like, you know, there's been some disapproval going on there. Because some ideas just aren't either useful or aren't necessarily as effective as they were. So the progression of ideas, it affects the way in which we perceive things. But all of these is just based upon what other people have said. I mean, even some of the discredited science from a long time ago is kind of like coming back, and there's stuff going on here. And the concept of like searching for the truth means that you have to reach a point of realizing that there may be a truth out there, but everything that we're doing is just like tiny little glimpses on the way. We're not really having hard and fast stuff going on here. And I certainly don't want anybody out there to ever be terrified of or superstitious about angels and demons and spirits and gods and all this bloody stuff, because it doesn't help you. Not in the least, no. No, let all the fear just like fall to the ground like dust, because like, oh, it doesn't matter. Okay, well, hopefully now I've prepared your mind sufficiently to be able to like listen to some ideas about the subject, and then you can run with it yourself. Before I do that, I'm just going to remind you of the story of what happened to me when I was in my late teens, and I had this friend of mine who had a psychotic breakdown because he was beaten up by a gang. What happened to him is he had a psychiatric breakdown, and he needed to have supplemental dopamine just to keep himself relatively sane, but even then he wasn't very sane. On that day, I went to go and see him because he was my friend. I want to have a cup of tea with him, you know. And before I went out, I practiced my visualization for a laugh. I sat in meditation and I tried to visualize a 5-pointed star being drawn on my face in light, because that's what I felt like doing. Because I was in the, reading pagan books and stuff, and I was a bit odd. But I realized I could only really properly visualize 3 of the points brilliantly. That one, and that one, and the rest of them I couldn't quite get right for some reason. Anyway, I laughed it off. I thought I was just being silly, just a bit of meditation, Got on my little 49cc moped and drove all the way down the country roads to go and see this guy. And he didn't even say hello. The first thing he said to me was, "I can see 3 points of a 5-pointed star on your face." Just like that. Right, so why would I give you that story? Is there a reason? Is there some kind of like stuff going on there that's important? To a certain extent, yes. He was a very sickly person. He was in an altered state of consciousness. He had a brain chemistry issue, so therefore he was in an altered state of consciousness. So therefore, altered states of consciousness themselves are important for the specific action of seeing something, hypothetically. Okay, this is the way it seems. Okay, but what is that state of mind? And there's no point in you trying to drug yourself to the point of insanity, or make yourself physically ill in order to try and have these experiences, because then you will know, yes, we'll also have spent rather a long time being ill mentally or physically, and that won't do you any good either. Right? The only thing that I can ascertain is that it has to be a certain clear state of mind. Live well. I suppose one thing I can say is try and live as well as you can. I mean, different people will do it in different ways, and I don't. And most people don't need to go to the extremes of raw veganism in order to achieve that. Come on, relax. But it is the spiritual states of prayerful meditative stuff, as well as the gamma frequency feeling that you get when you're trying to do ascension meditation, which seems to open you up to these things. Doing in meditation the opening of the chakras seems to provide you with a certain quantity of sensitivity to a certain extent. As I've already mentioned in my preparation of the Operator movie, doing things like mindfulness for an extended period of time gives you sensitivity to what's going on inside your mind, and therefore changes your perceptions as to what you are, and also what could possibly be going on, or what things could be popping into your mind. And then after that, you could do things like mantra meditation and get more religious with your exercises and trying to reach prayerful states and see how that can help you. Because it appears to be the prayerful meditative states in a state of openness and with the intention and attention delivered in particular ways as a result of what you're doing with your visualizations or whatever, which has some kind of importance in generating the experiences. But often these things happen by themselves. Why would they happen by themselves? Your brain is a complicated organism. There's lots of different regions in it, so there'll be some areas moving into different brainwave patterns at all various times throughout the day. Some people will be more prone to this, some people less prone to this, okay? So the people, I suppose, who are more prone to this might suddenly get things happening, or just get flashes of things in their dreams, or just moments of inspiration or intuition, all right? But then you've got to work out what the cause of the intuition is. And the way I see it is that people who are more intuitive occasionally move slightly out of their normal waking state of consciousness for a brief second, and then something pops in, which I think is a way of looking at it. I have no idea whether that is a concrete truth, and I certainly wouldn't want to turn around to you and explain it as if it was a concrete truth. So think about that as well. What kind of entity experiences have I actually had? Or experiences which I should say, if I'm being honest and clear and objective and true, are experiences which our society today would say has the classifications, the hallmarks, the whatever it is of an entity experience. For all I know, I could be insane. Because insane people don't know they're insane, right? So you don't know you're insane, you think you're sane, so maybe you're crazy. Maybe there's things wrong with the way in which you're thinking, you're feeling at the moment, which you need to start sorting out. We all need to carry on a path of growth and getting closer and closer to reality, but we've also got to go on a path of exploring nature, because we live in it, okay? You know, we live in nature. Nature is us and we are it. So, kind of like in sequence, we can go for the ghost experience I had at the age of 4. Then of course, we could move on to the angel experience I had in my late teens. Then we could move on to the voices of inspiration, which came when I opened up my chakras when I was in college, and I think I was probably smoking pot on that day. And I got messages falling into the top of my head from an apparent source, which was actually really rather interesting, and I think planted the seed of a lot of positive personal growth inside me, which was great. Then we had the experience of when I was doing astral projection and I saw 2 spirits at the door of my bedroom. Nice little old ladies, very, very sweet, and I addressed them badly, and I feel bad about that now, but never mind. Because I didn't know whether I was dreaming or not. I think that when you're in one of these experiences, you act as if it's real, and you act as if they're nice people and that sort of thing. You know, just do it. Even if it is just a psychological experience, it would just maintain, I suppose, the intellectual continuity during the experience. And then when it's over, then you can start to like be really, really critical of yourself and what you were thinking, if you know what I mean. So there was that. Then there was a very strange thing that only happened only a couple of years ago, and this kind of like made me think that in some respects things are even more complicated than I thought they were, because I was not a fairy person. Alright, I was not really a person of the fae folk, never. But I was lying in bed one night and I heard this sound of dragonfly wings above my head, and I thought, shit, there's an actual dragonfly in the bedroom. No, I couldn't see anything. It was just this dragonfly wings going around my head, the way a dragonfly would, and there was a little high-pitched voice coming from it. It was mentioning my name. Nick, 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 Nick. Yeah. Oh my God. You know, it was a very, very strange thing to happen. Was that a fairy experience? Big question. It had the hallmarks of what could have been a fairy experience, but was I just having like, did I just have a bad diet on that day? Okay? But on the other hand, if I had a bad diet on that day and it had affected my state of consciousness and it had changed me somehow, could that have opened me up to something that was already floating around my head and already in the room? There's a question there, there's not an answer. Right? If I was to be a dogmatic religionist from the occultic or pagan world, I would probably say, oh yes, you've been visited by the fairies. They do exist. They do this, they do that. You've got to be nice to them. Oh, you've got to be very, very careful. You've got to behave yourself very well around them. Don't insult them. Got to leave things out for them to feed on. Yes. Are you looking after them well? No, you're not. Terrible things are going to happen to you if you don't. Terrible things are going to happen to you if you don't. And people who do that are not the kind of people I want to have opening their mouths at people, ever. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't encourage anyone. It doesn't grow anyone. It just damages people and makes them terrified of things they shouldn't be afraid of. Come on, grow up. And if a person is so damn inadequate in their own life that they think it's worthwhile bullying someone using religious stuff, or spiritual stuff, or occultic stuff, the moment you see that in someone, move away from them. Okay, they're a psycho, they're insane, they're a person with a sadomasochistic mentality, and they just want to hurt you because they get pleasure from it. They're not there to actually advance you, they're just trying to like mess with you, really, okay? They are just trying to mess with you. Why? Because they get pleasure from it. Alright, they just get pleasure from it. There's lots of sickness in the world, and many of the individuals you'll come across who present themselves as being spiritual or good or anything can still have lots of things wrong with them. I mean, especially if a person's developed very strong faith in their particular interpretation of religiosity, just like that rather insane Anglican priest I came across at one time, dog collar and the rest of it, you know, cassock and stuff. He was trying to convince me that the reason I had chronic fatigue and candidiasis throughout my life was due to a history of Freemasonry in the family. For crying out loud's sake, what was he thinking even saying that to anybody under any circumstances? I mean, that is one of the most ludicrous things in the whole wide world. I mean, okay, he was an extreme example, but there are people like that out there. And a lot of the people you may come across may have a little of that in them. They think that they're right because of their religiosity. I've met plenty of people like that in the pagan community. Jesus Christ. It's frightening. It's frightening what humans allow themselves to do. It's frightening the past paths of thoughts that humans allow themselves to get tangled up into. If any of this subject just like really like frightens you or upsets you, just stop thinking about it and it goes away. It's that simple. Okay? Just stop paying attention to it. Go away. You know, if you're afraid, if you're worried, if you're superstitious, if you're the kind of person who relies too heavily on your psychic stuff or relies too heavily upon your magical stuff, then go away. Just go away. Stop the subject. Keep away from it. You're not intelligent enough. You're not mentally stable enough to have any interest in this stuff. Go away. But there's also the classification of experiences which other people can report to you, some of which are absolutely ludicrous and are designed purely for the purposes of enhancing your fear. There was this Wiccan high priest I knew at one time who told a terrifying story of the guardian spirit in this place, and it was physical and it was aggressive. Physical? And it looked like a court jester with a rotten face. I mean, what the flying heck is going on there with this man? It was ludicrous. That was not a spiritual experience if it happened. And it was probably someone who just like, I don't know, maybe it was New Year's Eve and he'd gone to a party and he was dressed as a court jester and he broke into the house and he was drunk. And all of a sudden this Wiccan high priest had convinced it was a spirit. I don't know. Or maybe it was just a lie. Just a damned lie. That was not the quality of experience which I've had under any circumstances at all in my entire life. Okay? So experiences with a parent, and I'm using the word apparent because we don't know. You could be a blot of mustard, a bit of uncooked potato. They seem to be relatively gentle, relatively peaceful, relatively calm. And the state of mind you're in when you're experiencing them is relatively peaceful and calm anyway. It's not a question of intensity, it's not an experience which should give you fear. On the basis that the hypothetical situation, that all of the apparent entity experiences that I've had were 100% real, I have no reason under any circumstances to be terrified of them. I've been doing Ouija board seances for Asmodeus and all that kind of stuff. I've done ritual magic for the purposes of invoking the angel of death, for crying out loud's sake. I was probably a bit of a disturbed child at the time, but I still did it, and I still had the experience, and I can still report it back to you. Dark places in my meditations, and not much there frightened me. I mean, what does scare you is when you suddenly get a sensory experience which shocks you. So doing dark mirror scrying and suddenly seeing something which seems to be something, it could all be delusion, it could all be hallucination, it could all be yourself like not being too clear-minded at the time. There's always this grey area between what could be a genuine experience and what might not be, and there's some kind of weird gap in the middle, and there's some things which give you some information or experience which leads you to be more on the side of genuine experience as opposed to non-genuine experience. But even if you have genuine experience, where do you go with that? Now, either you're going to believe in that experience as the experience in its own right, or you're going to end up reading lots of books by all kinds of other people who are prepared to culture up and terrify you into being this, that and the other. Too much superstitious thinking. too much fear-based thinking, too many people relying exclusively on magical and psychic stuff, like 100%, rather than thinking about their lives and focusing their lives on trying to sort themselves out and be good, well-integrated, contributing, healthy, sane members of human society. I therefore feel there's lots of issues that will need to be addressed within any form of interpretation about this stuff. Where do you go with that? Intellectually, where do you go with that? Right? The way I see it is that there's a limitation to as far as we can go intellectually with discussing the subject of spirits, ghosts, entities, demons, angels, and gods and goddesses and all that other fun stuff. There's a certain limitation we've got. And also, we've got to work out how important it genuinely is to people to have that particular theological interpretation or point of view. Because working in the psychic industry, I often come across a lot of people who are very damaged by other people in my own industry because of what they say. Words, just words, are weapons, tools, they're dangerous. The way the words are used sculpts people's interpretation of reality. The misuse of words sculpts people's interpretation of reality. And all of the various different mythologies and stories which is in the background, they also twist our perception objectively, as if seeing it for the first time like a child. You've got to look at it like, I don't know what this thing is, but let's have a look at the defining characteristics. Just like when you're in school and you're shown like little blocks of different metals and woods and minerals and this, that and the other, and you're told to look at it, tell us what the properties are, just by observation. So what are the defining characteristics of your experience? And that's all you can do. That's as far as you can go, practically speaking, because it's just an experience. There is, in some cases, instances when you think to yourself, hang on, there's something else going on here. Those are the fun bits. And that's what could lead you down all kinds of rabbit holes of thoughts, unless you have a level of intellectual discipline and the ability to actually think things through properly. I err on the side of saying, yes, there are definite entities out there which seem to have some kind of very soft influence on the world. But it is a very soft influence, and to the most part it's up to us doing physical things, which of course what creates physical change. So we've got to focus on what we can do rather than necessarily asking spirits to do it all for us. I think. I could be wrong, I doubt it. So what kind of classifications are there? There appears to be. I'll say that again in case you haven't paid attention to why I would say appears to be. Okay. There appears to be different levels of spiritual reality which one attains through meditation, and in each one there is a different variety of consciousness ascribed to it, and that it is the intention in meditation, especially when you're doing the higher level type ascension type stuff which I mentioned earlier on, which appears to be a key to have those experiences. It appears to be intention which appears to be able to draw your attention to what particular state of mind you need to be in for that particular form and function. It appears that different mythologies that different people believe in seems to have the ability to sculpt the consciousness of the individual in some ways to create a not only an operating system whereby they can then, through which they will then perceive, but also the states of mind and consciousness and conscious awareness which leads them to follow or to perceive things in certain particular ways. So therefore the theology of the individual when in practice, and by that I mean your meditations, prayers and the rest of it, the practitioner appears to be changing the orientation of the aura, the perception, the understanding and everything else that makes them what they are. in order to bring them to a level of being whereby they can possibly perceive something of that nature or interact with something of that nature, and possibly that is a motivation why some people are very strong about making sure people follow traditions perfectly. I think that following traditions perfectly is bloody stupid, actually, because you need to have your freedom, you need to have your ability to think for yourself, and you need to be able to work out what components of what you're doing is having positive effects and what components of what you're doing is having negative effects, and that's to try and move forward to have more positive experiences. There does appear to be genuine experiences which could lead strong credence to their objective existence. But strong credence is not necessarily fact. There does appear to be some consciousnesses which are of a higher order and some of a lower order. In terms of lower order, we could actually consider that to just be sickness and disease and decay, which has its own role to play in the ecosystem, and maybe there's an ecosystem within the world of spirit as well. We don't know. None of us 100% know. Then there's also the classification of apparent entity which you are creating. In some respects, I don't think there's much difference between the procedures of, like the Lesser Key of Solomon type stuff, or the procedures of chaos magic when people are trying to create a what they call a servitor. Because essentially the whole experience is just like a lot of theatricals, which takes an intention and then sends it out. Both are doing the same thing. So when you're going through the process of your occultic stuff and you're trying to create a servitor, are you in fact just in meditation creating an intention, a strong intention, and your visualized entity is just your vehicle to move it out of your subconscious mind into the outer world? That's a way of looking at it, that's a hypothetical. But the dynamics experience and energetic experience which you might go through when attempting something more Lesser Key of Solomon orientated will be dramatically different to the energetic experience which you would do if you were doing it the chaos magic way. The feelings will be different. The chaos magic way will be much more like the example of what I did in my bedroom, which helped to create the visions of prophetic visions of dreams, which I then suffered from for a fair period of time, and it actually scared me a hell of a lot. But that actually, it's in my history, it happened, it's there. But the perceptual world you move in if you're attempting spiritualism is again different. There's a certain level of openness which feels like crown chakra and third eye if you're trying to break it down. And it's essentially a question of upwards meditation until you have that moment of openness whereby something strange could occur, and you can ask these things. Your consciousness, you have the ability to ask and interact and communicate and vocalize and to receive semi-vocal instructions, which will feel in the form of energy containing information coming into the top of your head. To a certain extent, I can't really believe I'm saying this stuff. Now, what about demons? Do they have some kind of objective reality? In accordance with personal experience, I don't really know what we mean by demon. All right, the symbols of the Lesser Key of Solomon were supposed to be the gods of ancient Egypt, put into a Christian concept. Egypt, Babylon, Mesopotamia, that sort of area. But it's also the whole system is based upon a hoax. So you take it or you leave it. But if the question was, are there genuine evil spirits out there? Only as much as there are genuine evil people out there. I mean, there may be some negative intentions, but they're just people. And if you're sufficiently skilled, you should be able to put up your own psychological boundaries here, there, and everywhere with love and with strength, and bring positive energy into your working space, as you want to call it, and to fortify yourself and make yourself stronger, and therefore to block off any form of negative attack. And also to do so with a level of confidence. I mean, Alphonse Louis Constant said that if you're terrified of magic, then you need bravery. Just be brave and say, I'm not interested in that stuff. Okay, fine. Is there some negative toxic energy in the world which could have some kind of negative impact upon human health? Well, it's already inside you. It's called your diseases. And the disease condition could easily attract its own form of extra negative energy, or indeed it could be producing its own negative energy because it is a negative force inside you which needs to be controlled. And that can have an effect upon your body, your mind, your perceptions, your perceptual reality, and so on and so forth. But also, the illness in me, I used to be able to perceive as being like blackness inside the body. I don't see it there as much because it's not there as much because I've been treating myself an awful lot. And it would seem to me that the physical sickness inside me can sometimes affect my emotions. So a more superstitious person would say, no, you're being attacked by a demon, when in fact, no, it's like you've got something wrong with you physically, which is affecting your sense of perception of reality. Right? You know, that's something else to take into account. Having the skeptical mindset after you've had your experience, so you can go into like deep in-depth analysis as to what you've actually experienced, I think is quite important. And having that level of skepticism to bring yourself back to safety and back to responsibility and back to like living a normal, ordinary, mundane life without you being perpetually your perceptions adjusted up and above and beyond is also important. You know, they call it grounding. Some people call it grounding. I call it, you know, I might call it grounding, but also it's a question of generating the next level of clarity of thought. It's what actually happened there, what was really going on. There appear to be various different worlds in which these things exist. Well, I broke that down into different states of consciousness, in different moods, different symbol systems affecting how you perceive things, and affecting the possibly the brainwave energy. I mean, if you were to see a beautiful painting of a sunrise, that would have a very different emotional impact upon you as seeing a painting of a evil monster full of muscles and with fangs and red eyes coming to attack you. You would feel different just based purely upon what is being received through your senses. And that's like the environment, that's the physical environment, that's like the artistic environment, that's the mythological environment you're putting yourself in, that's the attitude of heart and being which you are creating as you are engaging with the various different spiritual schools of thought which have influenced you. If your entire life and your entire mythology is based upon some particular approaches, then that is going to be the only approach which you'll be able to do. And if there are entities associated with it, then those will be the only entities which you'll be able to communicate with, because that's where your sense of perception really lies. So it's not a question of do they exist or do they not exist, it's a question of how have you changed your sense of perception and understanding, and also your state of mind and your attitudes to be able to hypothetically interact with that particular concept or that particular entity. What mythologies are you living in? What stories and narratives do you have inside your head? What state of emotional peace and calm and balance are you in at the time? I guess one of my messages here is that there's lots and lots and lots of strange stuff out there, and lots of strange stuff which you can experience and will be genuine experiences, but experiences of genuine things is a different thing. So when we have our genuine experiences, we've really got to think hard about what we've actually experienced, what it actually means. And the bottom line is, you know, we won't ever know 100% because we can't. No, 100%, no matter what. There's always somebody who says that they do know 100%, and these are the people who I really wish would not, because they don't. In conclusion, number one, be questioning, be skeptical, and all the rest of that. Number two, some of your experiences might be more genuine than others, and some of the things you'll be experiencing will be more genuine than others. Number four, play with it. Try different forms of states of mind. Get yourself into meditations with mind machines and binaural beats, because then that can teach you some things about different states of consciousness in a very physical sense, which hopefully you can then translate into a spiritual sense when you finally learn how to do the state of mind, which is prayerful, which is what it is which does the weird stuff. On the basis that my experiences were genuine, there does appear to be a hierarchy of consciousness between the most well and the least well, the most in control and the least in control. So there would be some hypothetical reason to assume that we are somewhere in the middle, and our job is to somehow go up in terms of purity and in terms of efficiency, and to try and work out what it is we've been brought into this world for, and to try and find ways of doing it. So that maybe after we are dead, we can then go on to do more good things in the next world and fulfill whatever function it is that we have been chosen to function in that particular environment. But there's also all kinds of other issues of agents of decay and things which we'll have to fight along the way, just like with normal physical life. Life carries on, but there's more life to be had out there. What about spirits of the departed? Hypothetically, possibly real. I mean, the astral projections show you that your consciousness can exist outside of your physical body. If that can happen, then why on earth should there not be ghosts and angels and spirits and fairies and all the rest of it? But the question is, where are they? Not geographically, but in terms of state of consciousness to achieve them, state of consciousness to experience them. Very hard to say. Your standard, like magician, witch, or whatever, will just teach you the things to do with the candles, and will teach you the things to do with drawing pentagrams, and will teach you the things to do with the physical stuff. The physical stuff is nothing. It's not important. It's fun, it's a useful tool, it's a useful support, use it if you want to. But all the rest of it is to do with you, dealing with your energy field, dealing with your chakras, dealing with opening up, dealing with changing your sense of perception, and using your intention and maybe your vocal expressions to try and shift your perception of reality, and also to ask of these things some questions. I really don't know whether anything I've said this morning has made any sense to anybody out there at all. The subject of entities is grey. It's not black and white. The alleged effect that these things are supposed to have, it's not black and white. Our engagement with them, not black and white. Whether they exist 100% the way that we think they do, again, not black and white, therefore not 100%. But the experiences do happen, and it's weird. I don't see why there shouldn't be a reason to either believe or state that these things are real. There's no reason telling anyone to believe in these things, so they end up messing up their own lives through engaging in too much superstitious behavior and not thinking about what's really, really good and wholesome and true and beneficial for them. I mean, my concern here is that I'm giving you too much of a theology and not enough of a questioning attitude, and I would not want to just give you a theology, because then essentially they'll just become like system magic, and it would not be well, system magic is a theology, it's a religion anyway. As opposed to an intelligent, objective questioning and scientific way, or attempt to have a scientific way of approaching the supernatural from the point of view that it is not supernatural, but it is natural, because it occurs in the natural world, and if anything happens in the natural world, it has to, by its very nature, be natural. I went on a ghost hunt one time, and we had the usual stuff. There was the camera set up to catch like spirit activity, and there was one room where they were supposed to be doing table tipping, another room was a Ouija board room, and all that kind of stuff, and I was in the Ouija board room. Great fun. But there was one time the planchette was going around, there was some rather random letters appearing, and one girl just suddenly went very pale and started to cry. Quite intensely, very emotionally crying, not just, we're talking about real distraught, proper scary stuff. Because she was convinced that the planchette was moving around spelling out things that was relating to her deceased boyfriend. And it was all getting rather tragic, and she was starting to spiral off into all kinds of weird patterns of thought, and I had to take her out of the room, sit her down and comfort her to say, well, hypothetically, maybe that was your boyfriend, but on the other hand, maybe it wasn't. Half of the people around the Ouija board table have had a couple of glasses of wine. Some of them have probably taken a mickey, and And some of them are probably disbelievers, and there's probably some bad energy going on here. And you see the way that these people don't even understand how to ask questions of the Ouija board anyway, so of course there was some random stuff going on around. So how come you're so sure that it was your dead boyfriend telling you something terrible is going to happen? I mean, come on, stop being so paranoid. And I managed to turn her from being this crying, weeping, screaming little wreck into a calm, content, happy, upright, philosophical, seeing things in perspective kind of a person. It was terrifying to see her get that distraught just because of the outcome of a few letters on a Ouija board, just because of what she thought it could possibly mean. We have to look at what we think a thing could possibly mean, and then we also have to look at what it could actually possibly be, and we've still got to accept the fact that we could be wrong. We humans, we want to build up like simple patterns, simple understanding, simple structures. People want me to turn around to them and say, yes, ghosts exist, yes, there's life after death. No, there's experiences which could provide hypothetical evidence that is true. Absolutely. Definitely, and you will have them. But when we create patterns, when we create beliefs, and when we create understandings which are detrimental to us, we've got to find a way of looking at what we thought was true in a very different way. Okay? With thought. Not with worry, not with fear, not with superstition, and not with like poxypathetic third-degree initiated Wiccans who are just like acting like charismatic evangelists, but instead of frightening people about the devil, they're frightening people about guardian spirits or this, that, or the other. I mean, I want these people to just shut the heck up. You're making the world worse, not better. You're damaging people, not healing people. You're confusing them, not giving them a straight path. You think you're kind of helping them, but you're not. And many people are not sufficiently well adjusted enough to be spiritual guides for other people. It is terrifying, the beliefs that people develop about spirits and angels and demons and gods and all the rest of it, and the attitudes people take to them are just mental. You know, we are physical beings living in a physical reality. We have to focus on that first. We have to look after that side of things first. And many of your experiences will not be entity driven unless you're following the path of mediumship specifically. I think that the next video is going to be on the subject of spellcasting and possibly psychic attack and defense. Hopefully you understand where Nick Dutch comes from, and remember, I need to give you a inquiring attitude, I need to give you a skeptical attitude, but I also desperately need to encourage you to carry on experimenting and exploring. Because there is something out there which is real, and it's part of what we are as people. It's part of what we are as creatures in nature. It's part of what we are. And if it is part of what we are, why would we deny it? But on the other hand, if it is part of what we are, why would we allow it to drive ourselves insane? Okay? Occultism, magic, spiritualism, all these things should be used for your betterment.